Now our next guest will be Talia Eisenberg. She is a serial entrepreneur who focuses on developing consumer-facing products and services in the wellness and psychedelic industry. She's the founder of the Ibogaine Research Institute, a nonprofit in San Francisco, and their mission is to raise funds and awareness about the use of Ibogaine for opioid addiction interruption. Currently, she's a founding partner of a new startup designed to democratize access to medically safe and enduring treatments for addiction and trauma utilizing Ibogaine and other psychedelics. She's been featured in many prominent publications like the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, and she's written about her personal experiences with Ibogaine for the Huffington Post, which is always one of the best ways to get this stuff out here. That's what people really believe. And so I'm very pleased to welcome Talia Eisenberg.
Hi, everyone. I am in Sonoma. Just wanted to say hello. It's a sunny day. Thank you so much for having me on this panel. Yes, my name is Talia Eisenberg, and I'm by no means an expert. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a scientist, but I can speak as someone who was actively addicted in my early 20s to opiates and successfully used Ibogaine in a single night. And it's been a decade now since that night, and I've been alcohol and opiate free since then. So I really understand the addict's plight and why we need to scale this solution in a safe way. I have more questions than I do answers, but I do have a deep knowing when it comes to Ibogaine. I would love to see this medicine work for more people, and I think it's possible to scale this treatment safely to reach more and prevent deaths and overdoses. As Dr. Kamlet mentioned, a few days ago in the New York Times, the article came out that told how 100,000 people, which is an all-time record, have overdosed from opiates in the last year. This is a serious epidemic. In order to treat everyone that's died of an overdose in the last year, we would need a minimum of 273 treatments every day for the 365 days that we have in a year. And today, while there's Ibogaine clinics and people are working very hard, most of these treatments can only take 10 to 15 people a month, if that. So this is a problem that needs to be worked on. How can we treat more people effectively and safely? We know that 2.5 million Americans a year go to rehab, yet there's probably more like 10 million Americans who would like to go, yet they can't afford it and they don't have the time. Of those 2.5 million Americans who do go to rehab, it works for about less than 10%, the numbers show. I've read 5% in some cases. This is partially because traditional rehab models don't get to the core of the trauma fast enough, and partially because it takes months for neurology to shift in traditional treatment models. And before they get to that point, people tend to relapse. Ibogaine is miraculous because in 1 or 2 sessions, it can give you a physiological reset while including that spiritual awakening that Lakshmi was speaking about. Addiction is a mix between the two: physiological, spiritual, psychological. 3, you lose faith in yourself or anything greater than yourself, and you make your drug of choice or the behavior your higher power, and you physically lose the choice to stop. So Ibogaine gives you that choice back. Yet it's not available in the US, and it's a Schedule I drug. And, I want to talk a little bit about my experience with Ibogaine over a decade ago. I had a lot of family trauma. I come from a lineage of Holocaust survivors. I didn't have the early coping skills. I didn't learn them from my family. And then, of course, there's genetic addiction issues. And I always wanted to fill that hole inside of me, which, I call a spiritual malady. So Ibogaine interrupted that addiction and gave me time to learn new behavioral mechanisms, heal the shame and wounds that I carried. Today I'm married. I've been able to stay married and for the most part be happy. I have a child. I finished my MBA in sustainability. I've started a number of companies to help other people. I continue my spiritual practices, and now I work on Ibogaine as a solution. And what intrigued me most about awake.net when Lakshmi came to me is the FEAT grant program, which plans to treat people addicted to opiates who couldn't otherwise afford treatment. This is something that I think a lot about. I think within my world and our community, it's somewhat of a bubble. A lot of people are using these medicines and we're seeing breakthroughs, and they're doing it in a safe way with therapists, as Rick spoke about, but so many other people, probably 90% of the public doesn't have access. So I think awake.net's really important because this collaboration piece as a community is key to learning more and creating better resources among the group. The awake.net and other decentralized networks I'm seeing lately are able to crowdsource the best ideas, and there's not one central person making decisions or holding all the power. Something I want to touch on quickly is what we plan to do at awake.net. We're working on a series of blogs and panels on various topics. Topics we would like to explore as a community are, profile of an addiction. What is addiction? So the DSM-5 says addiction is defined as a chronic relapsing disorder characterized by compulsive seeking of the substance or behavior. It continues on despite harmful consequences and long-lasting changes in the brain. It is considered both a complex brain disorder and a mental illness. So addiction is not will-based. People think, I guess the general perception is people think you can just stop, but yet we have Ibogaine, which is an addiction interrupter. It's not a silver bullet, as many people will say, and you must do the work to stop and to create a new life. But Ibogaine is a great starting point when done safely and effectively. For me, Ibogaine interrupted the physical addiction and gave me the willingness and desire to want to do the work. I didn't believe in myself before I found this medicine. I wasn't willing to do the deeper work. In my journey that night, I saw, my grandmother, who was this incredible Holocaust survivor woman who wasn't a victim. She helped a lot of people in the world after she came out of that. She gave me the strength and showed me, I saw also where I was missing the mark and how to change my life. My experience with getting addicted to opiates was that I went to a dentist at 19. I was given Vicodin, and then I started doing harder opiates because I couldn't get any more Vicodin. Went to multiple rehabs in a year period, traditional rehabs. They probably kept me alive, but they didn't. After 3 weeks, I would always neurologically need an opiate. So doing Ibogaine really taught me about the need for the aftercare piece. I unfortunately had to do it on my own. I didn't have a lot of resources back then. I spent a lot of time hiking in the mountains in Boulder. I didn't have a community, and I'm hoping that, resources like awake.net can be this for others today. I've seen many people fail at their desired outcome for staying off their drug of choice because they don't have the community or therapeutic resources. I think the other thing we can talk about at awake.net is various protocols for various addictions. I see within our community, ketamine addiction is becoming a problem because people are taking it off label and they're using it without experts in smaller doses more frequently. I believe there's specific Ibogaine protocols for this versus methadone or heroin detoxes. There's behavioral addictions. More than ever, people are addicted to sex and food. So the question is, how do we approach this treatment protocol differently than, say, a physical detox to opiates? What other entheogens are best for various addictions? Applying for the FEAT program. Who is this for and what is the screening process? This is something we'll be talking about. Setting, intention, and integration. How to approach a flood dose journey with Ibogaine. What does a safe Ibogaine treatment look like? Screening, medical equipment, medical team, resources for people who want to use this medicine, and questions they should ask providers. I believe we should arm people with questions, people that want these treatments, so they can get the safe care that they need. There's questions on detox protocols, cleaning, and nutrition. I think pre and post care are arguably just as important as the actual treatment. How do we prepare people, and how do we people keep the greatest benefit? How do we give people the greatest benefits for their desired achievable outcomes? I know for me, the nutrition and hormone piece was huge and very valuable. The microbiome is said to be our second brain. Treatment itself, what happens in body, mind, and spirit when Ibogaine is taken? Many people see visions of their life like a movie and are able to clear fears and past traumas. Many people find God. And of course, you're forced to look at what has been holding you back. Ibogaine is said to stay in your liver for 90 days. And this is very important because you're able to bring in new changes, new behavioral changes. And then I think the aftercare options are important. The first year is incredibly challenging. What resources are available to help people? How do people afford them? I was able to go to a MAPS trained psychedelic therapist in Boulder named Marcella, if any of you know her, but many people aren't fortunate enough to have those resources. So how do we solve that problem? What should people expect when they go home? And then, of course, there's sustainability issues around Ibogaine or Iboga. Are there alternative plants we can use? Voacangine is something discussed. Analogs are being developed. And another thing that worries me is that Westerners are taking and selling Iboga from Gabon to other Westerners, and there's an increase in alcoholism among Bwiti as their land is stripped. I just read an article about that last week. So taking from this community to try and solve the problem in our community is creating the very same issue in that community. That doesn't make sense. But through the power of community and group buy-in, especially now with decentralized communities, we can answer some of these questions and help more people who want Ibogaine support for an addiction. And before I wrap up, I want to leave you with the following. We live in a very unique historical moment related to innovation of treatment methods for addiction. This is a psychedelic renaissance that has gone mainstream. The risks before us are very real and missing an opportunity to create something truly new, safe, and truly different with the interest of the suffering front of mind. We call on you to join us in the use of awake.net to inspire and educate and not repeat the problems of our past. Thank you.